Welcome back to Building a Tenor Guitar. Today I'll be working on the headstock. Building a Tenor Guitar, Part 27 at randallprice.com. In the last video, I glued these two extensions to the sides of the headstock to bring it out to the proper width. In this video, I need to smooth both sides of the headstock and bring it into the final shape, and I also want to apply a walnut veneer to the surface. Here's the shape that I'm going to use for the headstock, and it's a standard shape that is on the blueprint. What I've done is made a photocopy of this part of the blueprint. My plan is to cut out this pattern in the plywood and stick it to the headstock, and then I'll use a pattern cutting bit on the router table to cut out the profile of the headstock. To stick that pattern to the plywood, and I've used this several times in this video series, I'm using this 3M spray adhesive. Works very well for sticking the patterns to wood. I'll take that over to the bandsaw and cut it out. I'll just cut this out freehand on the bandsaw close to the line, and then I'll use a file and sandpaper to get it down to the line. There we go. I'm very close to the line. At some points right on the line, so that'll just take a minimal amount of sanding to bring it down to the line. So here's my pattern after I sanded it, and it just took very minimal amount of sanding. So the pattern's ready to go. The pattern will sit on there just about like that. So you can see I have a lot of excess material on the headstock to remove. Before I do any more on the headstock, I do need to get this surface flattened out. There's several different ways you could get this surface down flush. You could plane it, you could hand sand it. I'm going to touch it on the belt sander. I don't have a lot to remove there, so I'm just going to carefully try to sand it down flush. That's pretty good. What I want to be careful of is not to change the angle of this face. I need it to be at a right angle to the rest of the neck, so I need this line to be at a 90 degree angle to the center line of the neck. So I'll measure that. I'll do a little touch up to get this angle adjusted, and that should be good. Okay, take this back to the belt sander and just apply slightly more pressure on one side to the other to adjust this angle. And if I can, how you can see this in the video, but if I just highlight that angle with my pencil and bring the square up close to it, you may or may not be able to see that angle is pretty close to a right angle, so that's good. This surface is flush. Next I want to cut a walnut veneer to be glued to this surface. Okay, I took a piece of walnut and I cut it to roughly the same length and width as my headstock blank is right now. And then I resawed it on my bandsaw. Ended up with this piece. I sawed it an 1/8 inch thick. And I'm going to bring it down to close to a 1/16 of an inch thick on my drum sander. And when you're sanding wood that's fairly thin on this drum sander, so that the drum inside here doesn't make contact with this drive belt, you just make a little carrier or carriage to put it through on, and that's just a scrap piece of plywood, and I've just double stuck a piece of scrap wood here to hold my piece of veneer. I've got it pretty smooth, getting pretty close down to the 1/16 inch. Like a few more passes through there to reduce the thickness and call it good. So there's the walnut veneer piece. I'll just glue it to the surface of the headstock. I'll make a caul to go on top of here to get good adhesion, and I'll clamp that up. Yeah, I've got a caul just out of 3/4 inch pine, which I'll use to lay on the surface here to give good even pressure when I do the glue up. I'm going to put just a little bit of painter's tape on here to pull this in position from sliding around as I clamp it up. I'll leave that to dry. The glue is dry, and now I'll remove the clamps. There's the veneer glued to the headstock. Next, I need to smooth out the back of the headstock. You can see where these extensions are glued on there. They're a little different height than the center part of the headstock. But what I'm going to do is take this over and put it through my thickness sander, which I've modified a little bit, and I'll show you that next. Okay, the thickness sander has a rotating drum, and then it has a feed belt which feeds the stock under the drum. Well, obviously I can't run my whole neck through the thickness sander, so what I've done is modified this. I've clamped a piece of melamine covered wood to my drive belt, and I'm just going to feed my headstock in up to the angle forms to go up the rest of the neck, and then pull it back out, and I'll slowly work this down to a smooth surface. Because of the distance, I could reach under there with my thickness sander. That took care of about 2/3 of the neck. The rest of this I'm going to have to find another means of taking care of, and I'll probably do that over on the belt sander. That gives me a good guide to go on to bring the rest of it down to thickness. Okay, I got it pretty close with the belt sander. I'm just going to work it down the rest of the way with a block plane. I'll just keep working at that until I get it smooth. Okay, so I've got this worked down close enough. It's good and smooth across the back, and I just use a combination of the plane and a hand rasp and sandpaper, and I got that smooth. So next I'll profile the headstock, and there is the shape I'm going for. I've drawn a center line on the face of my headstock. I put a piece of double-faced tape on the back of my template. So I'm going to line those up. Adhere that down. And I've lined up the bottom of the edge of the headstock with the end of where the nut will be. I'll cut this fairly close on the bandsaw, and then I'll take this over to the router table using this bearing guided bit. The bearing will ride on the template and cut out the profile of the headstock. Because of the angle of the neck, I obviously won't be able to lay this neck directly down on my bandsaw table, so I'm just going to use this block to elevate the headstock so I can get it at a 90-degree angle to the blade. Okay, I'll head over to the router table. Okay, I have my router table set up with my bearing guided bit, and I have the template double face taped to the back, so I'll trim this out. Be careful splitting out on this end. Other than that, I think it should go fairly smoothly. There's a headstock, got a little burning on the edge, but I can take care of that. But turned out pretty good. I'm happy with that. That's it for this time. Next time I'll be shaping the back of the neck and the heel, fitting that up to the guitar.